What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Manny Maradiege. Today on Monday, November 11th, 11/11 today, the day after the majority of the Week 10 games have happened yesterday on Sunday. Some more great games. I feel like I say that every week, but truly, the last couple weeks have been very entertaining, and this one had a couple good ones. We're going to talk about, of course, the Kansas City Chiefs game and the Broncos game there with that last-second blocked field goal. Also, Sunday Night Football had a lot to talk about between the Lions and how close they were to losing that game, so we're going to discuss that and some more games. We're going to preview Monday Night Football as well on today's show, so make sure to stick around. And also, not just watching, but if you guys want to get involved with this show on any topic that we have on store today, you can go ahead and do that in an easy way by using the Super Chat feature that we have available to you guys now. Just by clicking the $ at the bottom of the chat box, you can now send in your Super Chat and get involved with the show, whether it be a question, comment, opinion you'd like to share. Please don't hesitate to do so. We always want to hear what you guys have to say, and your input and insight always makes the show a lot better in our opinion, so please don't hesitate to do that. It's nice and easy for you guys. Use the Super Chat button and click the $ at the bottom of the chat box. Send in your Super Chat and make sure to get involved with the show. But now, after that's now done and out of the way, we can go straight into talking about the games, right? And specifically, I thought one of the highlights of yesterday afternoon, the 1 o'clock window really, was this Kansas City Chiefs game and the Broncos game. A divisional game, the first time these two teams have met this season. And going into this game, I picked the Chiefs to win, and they ended up winning, right? But I thought it would be more of a blowout. Honestly, I underestimated what Denver's defense could do. After I saw the Baltimore Ravens game, I thought, yeah, they're okay, but it comes to a point where it all just kind of gets discombobulated and it all just kind of falls apart like it did against Baltimore. But after the Baltimore game, it's definitely feeling a bit, you're feeling sick if you're a Broncos fan, and just how they lost yesterday, right? Coming out after that tough defeat to Baltimore and being in this game really like to the last second. You thought you had to win, and then, of course, Kansas City blocked what would have been a game-winning field goal with 1 second left on the clock to win 16-14. And the Chiefs stay undefeated at 9-0, while the Denver Broncos fall to 500 now at 5-5. And it honestly, if we're talking just strictly about the Broncos, I don't think it gets much tougher in terms of a road trip for any team that they're going to have to face this season. But considering where the Broncos are in this journey with Bo Nix and, getting used to this new team, I don't think it gets tougher than this road trip, because they played the Ravens, 2 weeks ago now, and they played the Kansas City Chiefs this past week, both times on the road, and now they lost both of them, so they fall to 5-5. But a tale of two different games. The Ravens really had their way with the Broncos after a certain time, and then the Chiefs, to kind of echo more of a sentiment about how maybe the Chiefs aren't looking the same, maybe they lost a step here or there. It always feels like that's the discussion each and every week, but they find ways to win, and that's what good teams do. And ironically, that's how we're going to start this entire show, talking about the Chiefs in this segment, and then a little bit later talking about the Lions. Good teams find ways to win each and every week, and I've never been a huge fan about how you win. Good, pretty, ugly wins to win. And, good teams don't really bother too much about whether or not they throw for 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, or hold the other teams to, 10, 15 points. That's great. But at the end of the day, you're measured by those results, and the Chiefs are very well aware of that and very good at that as well. And speaking more about the Chiefs, on that blocked field goal, it was really interesting how head coach Andy Reid clarified after the game that that was something that they had, taking notice of, and that they wanted to take advantage of as the game went on. And we mentioned on that blocked field goal, Leo Chenal, George Karlaftis, and Mike Dana were really the ones that were involved on that left side of the Broncos, field goal unit, that left side of it, the right side if you're looking at it from the Chiefs' point of view. But yeah, really Karloftis, Chanel, and Mike Dana were all on that side. And a couple plays before, they had been getting a lot of penetration through that side. And I'm assuming that's what head coach Andy Reid was talking about, how just that left side of the Broncos field goal unit was not really holding up. They had gotten some pretty clean looks, but obviously they didn't block anyone, of course, until the most important kick of the game. But it's those sort of things, the small details. Actually noticing something like that, it's never something us casual fans would ever even notice. A block, a kick, an extra point, a field goal. It's all pretty similar looking, so nobody pays attention to those small details, and that made the difference, right? Andy Reid said that it was something that they wanted to take advantage of, so they ended up doing so, and it won them the game. They remained perfect at 9-0, and this is their best start in franchise history. Tied for the best start in franchise history, actually, and now it extends their undefeated streak, 9-0 this year, but it goes back to 15-0 going back to last year, which is now the longest since Green Bay won 19 in a row back in 2010 and 2011. So, they're it seems like they're making history each and every week, so it's nothing new, but it's still pretty cool, in my opinion, to see, what they're doing each and every week, which is pretty neat. But in terms of the performances, the Broncos stayed mainly in this game. Because of Bo Nix, I think this was his most impressive game that I've definitely seen him play, because of the opposition on the road and being in a position to win and pretty much doing everything he could to win this game. It was, in my opinion, the best game I've seen him play. He had 215 yards, 2 touchdowns. He was 22 of 30. Very efficient day for him. The passing game also, along with Bo Nix, Courtland Sutton had a nice afternoon, 6 receptions, 70 yards and a touchdown. Devon Vele had 4 receptions, 39 yards and a touchdown. And the running game wasn't too bad either, but mainly it was a defensive game. Obviously, only 30 points combined between both of these teams. Patrick Mahomes, not a bad game. 266 yards, a touchdown, and 28 of 42. Kareem Hunt didn't have his usual Kareem Hunt sort of impact. He only had 35 rushing yards, and Kareem Hunt actually had 7 receptions for 65 yards, so more involved in the passing game. Kelsey had a day, 8 receptions, 64 yards, and a touchdown. Hopkins, a much quieter day as well, with 4 receptions for only 56 yards. And again, both defenses were showing out. That's something both of these teams definitely bring to the table each and every week, right? If the Broncos offense isn't there, you can guarantee that their defense is going to show up. And same thing with the Chiefs. Their defense has kept them in a lot of games, or not kept them in a lot of games, but really shut the door and guaranteed them their wins as well. So looking at how the game sort of rolled out here, it was actually Denver that led at halftime 14-10, a game where the defense, like I said, was standing out because of the scoreline, and Denver was 1 for 2 in the red zone, and Kansas City was only 1 for 4. So these defenses, once they even got into the red zone, defending that short area, they were effective at doing so. And Kansas City scored the only points in the second half, really, with those 2 field goals. They were down 14-10 at halftime, then they scored those 2 field goals, and obviously they were up 16-14, right? But Bo Nix, really what put the icing on the cake for me on this great game by him was that last drive that was easily his best of his rookie year. He put together a 10-play, 44-yard drive. He converted 4 third-down conversions throughout this drive and put the Denver Broncos in a position to kick that 35-yard field goal, which, it sounds a lot easier than it actually is, right? In that environment, knowing that all the pressure's on you, knowing that you need a field goal, it's a lot for a rookie, and I think Bo Nix has shown a lot of his maturity. Sean Payton clearly trusts him, so they're working very well together. But of course, we know Kansas City, it's crazy. Like they get all these things, and people think it's lucky. But of course, if there was any team that you would bet on to block a field goal like that and win the game, it would be the Chiefs. It's just how it always feels like the cookie crumbles with them. And not only that, speaking about these wins and people now calling it lucky and everything like that, it follows a recent trend of winning their last 8 games when trailing in the second half. And, this game, because of the blocked field goal, it seems lucky. But if you're trailing over the last 8 games in the second half and you win all those games, it comes to a point, probably after like the fourth or fifth game, where it's not luck anymore. These guys are so comfortable. They never blink in these tough moments. When you got a guy like Patrick, of course, it's a lot easier, but a lot of credit to that defense, too. They are oftentimes in positions where they need to step up, create a turnover, get off the field, and things like that. That's why, you know, it usually it feels like the opposition is the one that crumbles, right? Because of that defense, but in this game, I felt even more assured that the Broncos were going to win this game because they were executing on those third downs, and Bo Nix was making some big throws when it mattered. But it ultimately didn't go down that way. Now, I will say that Patrick missed a wide open Travis Kelce on that field goal where they made it 16-14. So if they make that, the Broncos need a touchdown. So maybe it's not so dramatic, but it turned out like this, and it feels harsh for Denver because it feels like they did everything right. They didn't really harm themselves with turnovers or anything like that. Their defense played great, but they fought a 5-5, and it's crushing, of course, right? When you can get a huge win like this, especially as a rookie quarterback. But big picture, thinking about now into the later month of November, December, and talking about the playoffs, they still have their future in their hand. They're at 5-5, but they're the last seed in the playoffs. They hold that last wild card spot right now, and it's still on their hands, right? Of course, if they could win as many games as possible. And I know they play the Bengals, which is probably their biggest threat to take that spot. So, it's not like they have to depend on anybody else. It's still pretty much down to them. So it's hard to just wipe off this defeat, but it is what they have to do now. There's going to be a lot better games ahead for them to go out and win. But I think this is just encouraging for them as well to be in this game with the Chiefs. They always give them problems. If anything, just take the moral victory and say we hung with these guys and learn from it, I guess, going forward. But that wasn't the only great dramatic late field goal type of game that we had on Sunday Night Football. It was another one where the Texans almost beat the Detroit Lions, but they did execute their late game field goal and they won 26-23. We're going to discuss that, how truly bad the Lions played, but it doesn't really matter when we're talking about these great teams. That conversation is coming up right after the break. We'll be right back.